The wildfire was moving faster than anything Cole Grayson had ever seen, and the woman trapped in front of him was going to die if he didn't make a decision in the next 30 seconds. Her leg was shattered, blood soaking through her jeans, and she kept telling him to leave her behind. But Cole was a single father who understood what it meant to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. The flames were closing in, the smoke was choking them both, and the mountain was collapsing around them. He had no plan, no backup, and no guarantee either of them would survive. If you want to see how a single father risked everything to save a stranger from an inferno that someone deliberately set, stick around until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Cole Grayson wasn't thinking about being a hero when he pulled his truck off the main highway and onto the gravel access road leading up toward the Ridgefall Mountains. He was thinking about his son's dentist appointment next Tuesday, the stack of unpaid bills sitting on his kitchen counter, and whether he'd remembered to pack Max's inhaler in his school bag that morning. 32 years old, and his brain ran on a constant loop of logistics, schedules, and small disasters narrowly avoided. That's what single parenthood did to you. It turned you into a human checklist. The alert had come through on his radio about 15 minutes earlier while he was driving back from a supply run. Wildfire reported near Ridgefall Trail. Evacuations pending. All volunteer responders requested. Cole had done search and rescue work for almost 8 years now, ever since Max was a baby, and he'd needed something to keep his hands busy and his mind focused on something other than grief. He knew the mountains better than most people knew their own backyards. He knew the trails, the ravines, the hidden spots where hikers got themselves lost or injured. And he knew that when a wildfire kicked up in late summer with winds like this, you had about an hour before the whole thing turned into a disaster nobody could control. He'd called his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, and asked if she could pick Max up from school and keep him for a few hours. She'd agreed without hesitation, like she always did. Cole hated asking for help, but he'd learned a long time ago that pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. Now, driving up the access road with smoke already visible above the tree line, Cole felt that familiar tightness in his chest. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a low-level dread that came from knowing how fast things could go wrong in the mountains. He'd seen it before. Fires moved like living things, unpredictable and hungry. You thought you had time, and then suddenly you didn't. His truck jolted over a pothole, and he gripped the wheel tighter, eyes scanning the road ahead. The air smelled like burning pine and something sharper, chemical almost. That wasn't normal. Wildfires had a distinct smell, but this was different, wrong. He rounded a bend and saw the first flames in the distance, maybe half a mile up the ridge. Orange and furious, eating through the dry brush like it had been waiting for permission. The wind was pushing it downhill, which meant anyone still up there was going to have a very short window to get out. Cole parked his truck near the trailhead and grabbed his gear from the back. Rope, first aid kit, flashlight, water, emergency blanket. He didn't have the kind of equipment the official fire crews carried, but he had enough to pull someone out of trouble if he found them in time. And he usually did. That was the thing about Cole. He didn't quit. Not when it mattered. He started up the trail at a jog, scanning the area for signs of life. Most people would have already evacuated by now if they'd been smart. But there was always someone. Always one person who didn't check their phone, didn't hear the alerts, didn't think the fire would reach them that fast. The trail curved upward, and Cole's boots crunched over loose gravel and dried needles. His lungs started to burn from the smoke, but he kept moving. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he thought about Max again. Max, who would be sitting in Mrs. Patterson's living room right now, probably watching cartoons and eating crackers, completely unaware that his dad was running toward a wildfire instead of away from it. That's when he heard it. Faint, almost lost beneath the roar of the wind and the crackling of distant flames. A voice, calling out. Cole stopped, head tilted, listening. Help! It came from somewhere off the main trail, deeper into the forest where the old fire tower used to be. Cole swore under his breath and changed direction, pushing through the underbrush toward the sound. The smoke was thicker here, clinging to the trees like fog, and his eyes started to water. "Where are you?" he shouted. "Here, I'm here." Closer now. Cole broke through a line of trees and saw her. A woman, maybe 30, lying at the base of the old fire tower, which looked like it was about 2 seconds away from collapsing entirely. She was on her side, one leg bent at an angle that made Cole's stomach twist. Blood on her jeans, dirt and ash on her face. Her eyes locked onto him, and he saw fear there, but also something else. Determination. Like she was still trying to figure out how to fix this herself. "Are you alone?" Cole asked, kneeling beside her. "Yes." Her voice was tight with pain. "I fell. I can't move my leg." "Okay, I'm going to get you out of here." "The fire." "I know. We don't have much time." He pulled out his flashlight and checked her leg. Definitely broken. Probably a fracture above the knee, maybe worse. Moving her was going to hurt like hell, but leaving her wasn't an option. The fire was moving faster than he'd expected, and the wind was shifting. They had maybe 10 minutes before this whole section of forest turned into an oven. "What's your name, Ossie?" Cole asked, already working his hands under her shoulders. Sienna Vale. "I'm Cole. This is going to hurt, Sienna. I'm sorry." "Wait." She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "You need to leave me." Cole stared at her. "What?" "The fire's too close. You won't make it carrying me. Just go." "Yeah, that's not happening." "Listen to me." "No, you listen." Cole's voice was calm but firm. "I've got a 6-year-old kid waiting for me at home, and I'm not about to explain to him why I left someone behind to die. So we're doing this. Now hold on." He didn't give her time to argue. He shifted his weight, got his arms under her, and lifted. She gasped, her face going pale, but she didn't scream. Cole respected that. He adjusted his grip, trying to minimize the movement in her leg, and started moving. The first 50 feet were the hardest. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned, and every step felt like he was dragging himself through concrete. Sienna was lighter than he'd expected, but dead weight was still dead weight, and the terrain wasn't doing them any favors. Rocks, roots, uneven ground. He stumbled twice, caught himself, kept moving. Behind them, the fire roared closer. Cole didn't look back. Looking back wouldn't help. "You're insane," Sienna muttered through gritted teeth. "Yeah, I get that a lot. I'm serious. You're going to get yourself killed." "Probably, but not today." He didn't know if he believed that, but saying it out loud made it feel more true. That was another thing Cole had learned over the years. Sometimes you just had to lie to yourself until reality caught up. They reached the main trail, and Cole allowed himself one quick glance over his shoulder. The fire was maybe 200 yards back now, tearing through the forest like a wave. Trees exploded from the heat, sending embers spiraling into the air. The wind carried the flames forward, and Cole realized with a sinking feeling that they weren't going to outrun this. Not at the pace he was moving. "We need to go faster," Sienna said, reading his thoughts. "Working on it." "Put me down. You can move faster without me." "Stop talking." "Cole, I said stop talking." His tone was sharper than he'd meant it to be, but he didn't have the energy for this conversation. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other, ignoring the pain in his shoulders, the burning in his lungs, the voice in his head telling him this was a mistake. The trail curved downward, and Cole nearly lost his balance on a patch of loose gravel. He caught himself against a tree, breathing hard, and adjusted his grip on Sienna. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow. Shock, probably, or exhaustion. Maybe both. "Stay with me," Cole said. "I'm here." "Good, keep talking. Tell me why you were up here." "Does it matter?" "It keeps you awake, so yeah, it matters." Sienna was quiet for a moment, and Cole thought maybe she'd passed out. But then she spoke, her voice quieter now. "I was looking for evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Land fraud. My company, Environmental Engineering, we found discrepancies in some surveys, protected land boundaries that had been moved. Someone's trying to steal property worth millions." Cole frowned, his mind trying to process what she was saying while also calculating how much farther they had to go. Another quarter mile, maybe less, but the fire was right behind them now, close enough that he could feel the heat on his back. "Why were you out here alone?" he asked. "I didn't think anyone would believe me without proof. I thought, if I could document the changes myself..." She broke off, wincing. "Stupid." "I know." "Not stupid, just bad timing." An ember landed on Cole's jacket, and he brushed it off without breaking stride. The smoke was so thick now he could barely see 10 feet ahead. His eyes burned, his throat felt like sandpaper, and his legs were starting to shake from the effort of carrying her. "We're not going to make it," Sienna said quietly. "Yes, we are." "Cole?" I said yes. He didn't know where the certainty came from. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was the thought of Max sitting in Mrs. Patterson's living room, waiting for his dad to come home. Cole had made a lot of mistakes in his life, but he'd be damned if dying on this mountain was going to be one of them. The trail opened up ahead, and Cole saw the access road through the smoke. His truck was still there, exactly where he'd left it. Relief hit him so hard he nearly stumbled. "Almost there, he said, more to himself than to Sienna. He pushed forward, every muscle in his body screaming, and finally reached the truck. He lowered Sienna carefully into the passenger seat, her head lolling back against the headrest. She was conscious, but barely, her skin pale and clammy. "You good?" Cole asked, even though he knew the answer. "No." "Fair enough." He slammed the door, ran around to the driver's side, and threw the truck into gear. The fire was right behind them now, flames leaping across the road, and Cole didn't wait to see if they could make it. He floored the gas pedal and drove. The truck bounced over the rough road, and Cole kept his eyes locked on the path ahead. Smoke poured through the vents, and he rolled up the windows, but it didn't help much. Sienna coughed beside him, her hand pressed against her chest, and Cole reached over to steady her. "Breathe slow," he said. "We're almost out." And then, just as suddenly as it had surrounded them, the fire fell away. They broke through the smoke, and the air cleared. Cole didn't slow down until they were a full mile down the mountain, and even then, he only eased off the gas a little. Sienna turned her head to look at him, her eyes glassy with pain and exhaustion. "You're insane," she said again. "Yeah," Cole said. "I know." The hospital was chaos. Cole had called ahead, so they were ready when he pulled up to the emergency entrance. A team of nurses rushed out with a gurney, and within seconds, Sienna was being wheeled inside. Cole followed, his legs unsteady, his body finally starting to register everything he'd just put it through. A nurse stopped him in the hallway. "Are you injured?" "No, I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine." The nurse gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but she didn't push. She handed him a bottle of water instead and told him to sit down before he passed out. Cole took the water, but didn't sit. He leaned against the wall, closed his eyes, and tried to catch his breath. He stayed there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out to see a text from Mrs. Patterson. "Max is asking about you. Everything okay?" Cole typed back quickly. "All good. Be home soon." He didn't know if that was true, but it felt like the right thing to say. A doctor appeared in the hallway, clipboard in hand, and Cole straightened. "You're the one who brought her in?" the doctor asked. "Yeah, how is she?" "Stable. Fractured femur, some smoke inhalation, minor cuts and bruises. She's lucky you found her when you did." "Is she gonna be okay?" "Long recovery, but yeah, she'll be okay." "Yeah." Cole nodded, relief flooding through him. "Good. That's good." The doctor studied him for a moment. "You should get yourself checked out. Smoke inhalation's no joke." "I'm fine. That's what everyone says right before they collapse." Cole almost smiled. "I'll take my chances." The doctor shook his head but didn't argue. "She's asking to see you if you're up for it." "Yeah, okay." Cole followed the doctor down the hall to a small room where Sienna was lying in bed, her leg immobilized in a brace. She looked better than she had in the truck, but not by much. Her face was still pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Hey," Cole said, stepping into the room. "Hey." Sienna's voice was hoarse. "You look terrible." "Thanks. You too." She smiled faintly. "They told me what you did. Carrying me all the way down the mountain. That was... I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." "I do, though. You saved my life." "I don't know how to repay that." "You don't owe me anything." Sienna shook her head. "I do. And I will. I don't know how yet, but I will." "What?" Cole didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. There was something in her eyes, though. Something that made him think this wasn't over. That whatever she'd been doing up on that mountain, whatever evidence she'd been looking for, it was bigger than just a broken leg and a wildfire. The fire, Sienna said quietly. Did they say what caused it? Not yet, but they're investigating. It wasn't an accident, Cole frowned. What do you mean? Sienna's jaw tightened. I mean, someone set it, on purpose, and I think it was meant to kill me. Cole stared at her, the words hanging in the air between them like smoke that hadn't cleared yet. Someone set it, on purpose, and I think it was meant to kill me. His first instinct was to dismiss it as paranoia, maybe shock-talking, but the look in Sienna's eyes stopped him cold. She wasn't hysterical, she wasn't confused, she was angry, and underneath that anger was something sharp and calculated. That's a serious accusation, Cole said carefully. I know what I'm saying. Wildfires happen all the time up there, especially this time of year. Dry conditions, high winds. I'm not an idiot, Cole. Sienna's voice had an edge now. I've spent the last 3 months investigating illegal land transfers in that area. Protected forest suddenly reclassified as development property. Survey markers moved, documents forged, and the one person who could prove it was me. I was up there documenting GPS coordinates when I fell from that tower. 2 hours later, a wildfire starts in the exact same location. You think that's a coincidence? Cole rubbed his face with both hands, exhaustion pressing down on him like a physical weight. He wanted to go home. He wanted to pick up Max, make him dinner, help him with his homework, and pretend the world wasn't as complicated and dangerous as Sienna was making it sound. But he couldn't shake the memory of that smell on the mountain, the chemical sharpness beneath the burning pine. Wildfires didn't smell like that. What kind of development are we talking about? He asked. Resort complex. Luxury hotels, golf courses, private residences. The company behind it is called Helix Development Group. They're worth billions, and they've been quietly buying up land around Ridgefall for the past 2 years. Except some of that land wasn't supposed to be for sale. It was protected by federal conservation easements. So how'd they get it? Someone inside the county planning office changed the records, moved boundary lines on digital maps, altered survey data, backdated permits. My company was hired to do an independent environmental impact assessment, and that's when we found the discrepancies. At first I thought it was just clerical errors, but the more I dug, the more I realized it was deliberate, systematic. Cole leaned against the wall, trying to process all of this. He wasn't a lawyer or an investigator. He fixed things with his hands, pulled people out of bad situations, and tried to keep his kid fed and happy. Corporate fraud and billion-dollar land deals were so far outside his world, they might as well have been happening on another planet. And you went up there alone, he said, to get proof. Well, I had to. If I'd gone through official channels, whoever's behind this would have buried the evidence before anyone could act. I needed something undeniable. Photos, coordinates, physical proof that the markers had been moved. Did you get it? Sienna's expression darkened. Some of it. I had my camera with me when I fell, but I don't know if it survived. And even if it did, I'm not sure it matters now. If they were willing to burn down half a mountain to stop me, they're not going to let a few photos get in their way. Cole thought about the fire again. The speed of it, the way it had moved, almost like it had been herded. He wasn't an expert, but he'd seen enough wildfires to know when something felt wrong, and this one had felt wrong from the start. You need to tell the police, he said. And say what? That I think someone tried to kill me with a wildfire? They'll think I'm crazy. Maybe, but you still need to report it. Sienna closed her eyes, and for a moment she looked smaller somehow, vulnerable. I will, but I need time to think, to figure out what I can prove and what's just speculation. You almost died today. I know. So did I. That got her attention. She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or just the realization that her choices had consequences beyond herself. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't mean to drag you into this. You didn't drag me into anything. I made my own choice. Still, you didn't sign up for corporate conspiracies and arson. You were just trying to help. Yeah, well, that's kind of what I do. Sienna studied him for a long moment, and Cole felt uncomfortable under her gaze. He wasn't used to people looking at him like that, like he was something worth examining. You're different, she finally said. Different how? I don't know yet, but you are. Cole didn't know what to say to that, so he changed the subject. You should rest. Doctor said you've got a long recovery ahead. What about you? I'm fine. Well, you keep saying that because it's true. You carried me down a mountain through a wildfire. You're not fine. You're just good at pretending. Cole felt a flicker of irritation. He didn't like being analyzed, especially by someone he'd just met. I need to get home. My kid's waiting. Right, of course. Sienna hesitated, then added, Thank you. Again. I know I already said it, but you don't need to keep thanking me. I do, though, because people like you don't exist in my world. People who do the right thing just because it's right, without expecting anything in return. It's rare. Cole wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an indictment of the world she lived in. Probably both. He nodded once, awkwardly, and turned to leave, but Sienna's voice stopped him at the door. Cole? Yes? Be careful. If I'm right about this, the people behind it aren't going to just let it go. And you're connected to me now. That might make you a target too. Cole looked back at her, saw the worry in her eyes, and felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear exactly. More like a cold understanding that his life had just gotten a lot more complicated. I'll be careful, he said, and then he left. By the time Cole got home, it was almost 8 o'clock. Mrs. Patterson met him at the door with Max in tow, and the moment his son saw him, the kid launched himself forward like a missile. Dad! Cole caught him, wincing slightly as his sore muscles protested, and lifted Max into a hug. Hey, buddy. Mrs. Patterson said you were helping with a fire. Was it scary? A little, but I'm okay. Did you save anyone? Cole set Max down and ruffled his hair. Yeah, I did. Cool. Mrs. Patterson was watching him with the kind of look that said she knew he was downplaying things. She'd been their neighbor for 5 years now, ever since Cole had moved into the small house on Maple Street, and she'd become something like a second grandmother to Max. She didn't ask questions, but she also didn't miss much. You look like you've been through hell, she said bluntly. I'm fine. That's the 3rd time you've said that today. Makes me think it's not true. Gossi. Cole managed a tired smile. I just need a shower and some sleep. Well, Max already ate dinner. I made extra meatloaf if you're hungry. Thanks, Mrs. Patterson. I owe you. You owe me nothing. Just take care of yourself. And that boy. She nodded toward Max, who was already racing toward the living room. Cole promised he would, and after Mrs. Patterson left, he found Max sprawled on the couch with a book about dinosaurs. The normalcy of it, the quiet house, the kid reading, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen felt almost surreal after everything that had happened. Hey, Max? Yeah? You good? Everything okay at school today? Yep. We learned about fractions. Cool. You like fractions? Not really. They're confusing. Yeah, they are. But you'll get the hang of it. Max looked up at him, his expression serious in the way only 6-year-olds could pull off. Are you sure you're okay, Dad? I'm sure. You smell like smoke. Yeah, I know. I'm going to take a shower. You need anything? Nope. Dasi bu on me. Cole left him there and headed upstairs, peeling off his clothes as he went. His jacket was ruined, covered in ash, and singed in a few places. His jeans weren't much better. He tossed everything into the hamper and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the grime and the smell and some of the tension that had been coiled in his shoulders since the moment he'd heard Sienna's voice calling for help. He stood there longer than he should have, just letting the water run over him, and tried not to think about what she'd said. Someone said it, on purpose. If that was true, then he just walked into the middle of something dangerous. Something that had nothing to do with him but somehow involved him now anyway. Cole wasn't naive. He knew there were people in the world who did terrible things for money and power. He'd seen enough of it, even in a small town like this. But the idea that someone would set a wildfire, Risk destroying lives, homes, entire communities, just to cover up a crime? That felt like something out of a movie, not real life. Except Sienna Vale didn't strike him as someone who exaggerated. She'd been calm, even when she was in pain. Focused. She believed what she was saying, and that scared him more than the fire had. He turned off the water, dried himself off, and threw on a clean t-shirt and sweatpants. When he came back downstairs, Max was asleep on the couch, the dinosaur book open on his chest. Cole carefully lifted him, carried him to his bedroom, and tucked him in. Max stirred slightly, but didn't wake up. Cole stood there for a moment, just watching his son sleep, and felt that familiar ache in his chest. The one that came from loving someone so much it hurt. The one that reminded him every single day why he kept going, even when things got hard. "Night, buddy," he whispered. Then he went back downstairs, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and collapsed onto the couch. His phone buzzed, and he pulled it out to see a message from an unknown number. "This is Sienna. Got your number from the hospital intake form. Hope that's okay. Just wanted to say thanks again, and to let you know they're releasing me tomorrow. I'll be staying at a hotel for a few days while I figure things out. If you need anything, or if anything weird happens, let me know." Cole stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Glad you're okay. Take care of yourself." He almost left it at that, but then added, "If you need help with anything, let me know." He regretted it the moment he hit send. He didn't need to get more involved. He'd already done his part. But something about Sienna's story nagged at him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The next morning, Cole woke up to his phone ringing. He fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Unknown number again, but different from Sienna's. He answered, his voice rough with sleep. "Yeah? Is this Cole Grayson? Who's asking?" "Detective Raymond Hale, County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling about the Ridgefall fire yesterday. I understand you were one of the first responders on scene." Cole sat up, instantly more awake. "I was doing volunteer search and rescue. Found someone trapped up there." "Right, Sienna Vale. I've been trying to get in touch with her, but the hospital said she's not taking calls. I was hoping you could help me understand what you saw up there." Cole hesitated. He didn't know this guy, didn't know if he could trust him, but refusing to cooperate with the police would only make things worse. "What do you want to know?" "Yeetish aunt. Walk me through it. From the moment you got the alert to the moment you left the scene." Cole did. He kept it factual, no speculation, just what he'd seen and done. The detective listened without interrupting, occasionally making a sound that might have been agreement or just acknowledgement. "And Ms. Vale," the detective said when Cole finished. "What was she doing up there?" "She said she was hiking, got turned around, ended up at the old fire tower, and fell." "Hiking alone?" "Oh, that's what she said. Did she say anything else? About why she was there, or what she was doing before she fell?" Cole kept his voice neutral. "She was in a lot of pain. We didn't exactly have time for a conversation." "Right, of course." There was a pause, and then the detective asked, "Did you notice anything unusual about the fire? The way it was moving? The intensity? Anything like that?" Now they were getting to it. Cole chose his words carefully. "It was fast. Faster than I expected. And the smoke had a strange smell, chemical almost. But I'm not a fire investigator. Could have been anything." "Chemical," the detective repeated, like he was writing it down. "Interesting. We're still waiting on the arson investigation team to finish their analysis. But preliminary reports suggest there may have been accelerants involved." Cole's grip tightened on the phone. "Accelerants? You mean someone started it on purpose? I'm not saying that, but it's a possibility we're looking into." "Why would someone do that?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." The detective paused again, and when he spoke, his tone was different, more cautious. "Mr. Grayson, if Miss Vale told you anything at all, that might be relevant to this investigation, now would be the time to share it." Cole thought about Sienna's words. The land fraud, the altered surveys, the billion-dollar development deal. Part of him wanted to tell the detective everything, just to get it off his chest. But another part of him, the part that had learned not to trust authority blindly, held back. "She didn't tell me anything," Cole said. "We were too busy trying not to die, Chit." The detective sighed. "All right. If you think of anything else, give me a call. And if you hear from Ms. Vale, let her know I need to speak with her as soon as possible. Will do. The call ended, and Cole sat there on the couch, staring at his phone. Accelerants. That meant arson. That meant Sienna had been right. Someone had set the fire. And if the detective was already asking questions, that meant the investigation was moving fast. Cole didn't like it. Didn't like the way the detective had phrased things, like he was fishing for information without giving anything away. Didn't like the way his gut was telling him that something about this whole situation was off. He sent Sienna a text. Detective just called. Said they found evidence of accelerants. You need to talk to him. Her response came a few minutes later. I will, but not yet. I need to get my camera first. If it survived, the photos on it are the only proof I have. Can you help me? Cole stared at the message, his finger hovering over the keyboard. He should say no. He should tell her to let the police handle it. He should focus on his own life, his own kid, and stay as far away from this mess as possible. But he didn't. Instead, he typed, "Where's the camera?" Still up on the mountain, near the fire tower. If the fire didn't destroy it, it's in my backpack about 20 feet from where you found me. You want me to go back up there? I know it's asking a lot, but I can't do it myself. Not with this leg. And I don't trust anyone else. Cole closed his eyes, already knowing he was going to regret this. When? As soon as possible, before they close off the area completely. I'll see what I can do. He set the phone down and ran his hands through his hair, feeling the weight of the decision settling over him. This was stupid. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of thing he should be avoiding. But he'd already carried Sienna down a mountain through a wildfire. Compared to that, going back up to grab a camera didn't seem like such a big deal. Cole spent the rest of the morning making arrangements. Mrs. Patterson agreed to watch Max after school again, though she gave him a look that said she was starting to worry. He couldn't blame her. He was starting to worry too. By noon, he was back in his truck, driving toward Ridgefall. The fire had been contained overnight, but the area was still restricted. Cole knew a few back roads, though. Trails that didn't show up on official maps. He'd been hiking these mountains long enough to know how to get in without being seen. He parked a mile from the main trailhead and hiked in on foot, carrying a small backpack with water, gloves, and a flashlight. The forest looked like a war zone. Charred trees, blackened ground, ash everywhere. The smell of smoke still hung in the air, thick and oppressive. It was hard to believe this was the same place he'd been just yesterday. The fire tower was still standing, barely. Most of it had burned, the wooden structure reduced to skeletal beams and twisted metal. Cole approached carefully, scanning the ground for anything that looked like a backpack. It took him almost 20 minutes, but he finally found it. The backpack was half buried under debris, scorched on one side but mostly intact. Cole pulled it free, brushing off the ash, and unzipped it. Inside was a camera, a notebook, a water bottle, and a few other personal items. The camera looked okay. No visible damage. He didn't turn it on, just zipped the backpack closed and slung it over his shoulder. That's when he heard voices. Cole froze, his pulse quickening. He ducked behind a fallen tree and peered through the branches. Two men were walking through the burned area, both wearing jackets that said Helix Development on the back. They were talking, their voices low but audible. Sure it's all gone? Yeah, the fire took care of it. No way anyone's finding anything now. What about the woman, the one from the engineering company? She's in the hospital, broken leg, she won't be a problem. You sure about that? Positive. Even if she talks, she's got no proof. Just accusations. And we've already got people working on discrediting her, if it comes to that. Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just listened. What about the guy who pulled her out? Nobody. Some volunteer firefighter. He's not part of this. Still, loose ends make me nervous. Relax. It's handled. The fire's being ruled accidental. Dry conditions, high winds, all that. By the time anyone realizes what really happened, the development deal will be finalized and will be long gone. The men moved on, their voices fading into the distance. Cole stayed where he was for another few minutes, making sure they were really gone. Then he stood, adjusted the backpack on his shoulder, and started back down the mountain. His hands were shaking. Cole drove straight to the hotel where Sienna was staying. She answered the door on crutches, her legs still in a brace, and the look of relief on her face when she saw the backpack almost made the whole stupid trip worth it. "You got it," she said. "Yeah, and I heard something you need to know about." He told her everything. The two men from Helix Development, the conversation about the fire being ruled accidental, the plan to discredit her if she went public. Sienna listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every word. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "They're not going to get away with this." "Sienna, no, I'm done being careful. I'm done playing by the rules. These people tried to kill me, Cole. They burned down a mountain to cover their tracks. And you heard them. They're going to walk away from this like nothing happened." "What are you going to do?" She looked at him, and there was something fierce in her eyes. Something that reminded him of the way she'd looked on the mountain, even with a broken leg and flames closing in. Determined, unbreakable. "I'm going to expose them," she said. "Every last one of them. And I'm going to need your help." Cole stood in the doorway of Sienna's hotel room, the backpack still slung over his shoulder, and felt the full weight of what she was asking settle onto him like a second skin. He'd come here to return her camera, maybe check that she was okay, and then go home to his regular life. The life where the biggest crisis was helping Max with fractions or remembering to pay the electric bill on time. But the look in Sienna's eyes told him that wasn't going to happen. She wasn't asking him to help. She was telling him she needed him, and there was a difference. "I don't know anything about corporate fraud or investigations," Cole said, even though he knew it didn't matter. "You don't need to. You just need to be a witness. You heard them, Cole. You heard those men admit to arson and conspiracy. That's evidence. Evidence that'll get thrown out of court because I was trespassing on restricted property. Maybe, but it's a start. And right now, I'll take whatever I can get." Cole set the backpack down on the small table near the door and rubbed his face with both hands. He was tired, bone-deep tired in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. He'd spent the last 24 hours running on adrenaline and bad decisions, and now Sienna was asking him to double down. "What exactly are you planning to do?" he asked. Sienna shifted on her crutches, wincing slightly as she moved toward the bed and lowered herself onto the edge. "First, I need to go through the photos on my camera. If they're intact, they'll show the altered survey markers, the GPS coordinates, everything. Then I'll compile a full report, including your testimony about what you heard on the mountain. After that, I'm taking it to the county hearing next week." "What county hearing?" "Helix Development has a public hearing scheduled for final approval on their resort project. It's a formality. Everyone expects it to pass without issue. But if I show up with proof that they committed fraud and arson to get that approval, it changes everything." Cole sat down in the chair across from her, his mind working through the logistics. "They'll have lawyers, expensive ones. They'll tear you apart. Probably, but I have to try." Why? Why risk it? You could take what you know to the feds, let them handle it." Sienna's expression hardened. "Because the feds take months, sometimes years, to build a case. By then, Helix will have their permits, construction will be underway, and it'll be too late to stop them. The environmental damage alone will be irreversible. Old-growth forest, endangered species habitats, water systems, all of it gone. And for what? So a few billionaires can build golf courses and luxury condos? You sound like you've got a personal stake in this." "I do. My whole career is built on protecting places like Ridgefall. If I let this slide, what's the point? I might as well be working for the people destroying it." Cole understood that kind of conviction. He'd felt it before, back when he was younger, and still believed that doing the right thing mattered more than the consequences. Life had taught him otherwise. Life had taught him that sometimes the right thing got you killed, or worse, left your kid without a father. But Sienna didn't look like someone who'd learned that lesson yet. She still had fight in her, and Cole couldn't decide if that was admirable or just reckless. "What do you need from me?" he asked, already knowing he was going to regret it. "Come to the hearing with me. Tell them what you heard. Back me up when they try to say I'm making this up." "That's it?" "That's it. I'm not asking you to storm any buildings or confront dangerous people. Just show up and tell the truth." Cole almost laughed. Just show up and tell the truth. Like it was that simple. Like standing up in front of a room full of powerful people and accusing them of crimes wouldn't paint a target on his back. But he looked at Sienna, saw the desperation mixed with determination, and knew he wasn't going to say no. "When's the hearing?" he asked. "Next Tuesday, 10 in the morning. I'll be there." Oh, relief flooded her face, and for a moment she looked younger, vulnerable. "Thank you. I know this isn't your fight, but it is now," Cole said, "whether I like it or not." That night, Cole sat at his kitchen table with a beer he wasn't drinking and tried to figure out how he'd gotten here. A week ago, his biggest concern had been whether Max's asthma inhaler needed a refill. Now he was mixed up in arson, corporate fraud, and what might very well turn into a legal nightmare. He kept replaying the conversation he'd overheard on the mountain, the casual way those men had talked about destroying evidence and discrediting Sienna, like it was just business, like human lives were collateral damage. Max wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Dad? Why are you still up?" "Just thinking, buddy. What are you doing awake?" "I had a bad dream." Cole opened his arms, and Max climbed into his lap, small and warm and trusting in a way that made Cole's chest ache. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really. It was dumb." Dreams usually are. They sat there in silence for a few minutes, and Cole held his son close, breathing in the smell of kid shampoo and laundry detergent. This was what mattered, this right here. Not corporate fraud or wildfires or standing up to powerful people. Just this, keeping Max safe and happy and loved. "Dad?" Max's voice was muffled against Cole's shoulder. "Yeah? Are you scared of stuff sometimes?" The question caught Cole off guard. "Yeah, sometimes." "What do you do when you're scared?" Cole thought about it. "I do it anyway. Whatever it is I'm scared of. Because being scared doesn't mean you stop. It just means you keep going even when it's hard." "That sounds scary." "It is, but that's kind of the point." Max pulled back and looked at him with those big, serious eyes. "Were you scared when you saved that lady from the fire?" "Terrified. But you did it anyway." "Yeah, I did." Max seemed satisfied with that answer. He yawned, and Cole carried him back to bed, tucking him in and kissing his forehead. As he stood in the doorway watching his son drift back to sleep, Cole made a decision. He was going to see this through, not because he wanted to be a hero or because he believed he could make a difference, but because Max was watching. And someday, when Max was old enough to understand, Cole wanted him to know that his dad had done the right thing, even when it was terrifying. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Sienna called him twice a day with updates, her voice alternating between focused intensity and barely contained panic. The photos on her camera had survived. They showed everything she'd claimed: altered survey markers, GPS coordinates that didn't match official records, physical evidence of tampering. She'd compiled it all into a presentation, complete with side-by-side comparisons and technical analysis that Cole barely understood. "This is solid," she told him during one call. "Even if they try to discredit me, the data speaks for itself." "What about the detective?" Cole asked. "Did you talk to him?" "Yeah, he's skeptical. Wants more evidence before he'll move forward with an arson investigation. Says accelerants could have been residual chemicals from old equipment stored near the fire tower." "That's bullshit." "I know, but without a confession or a witness who actually saw someone set the fire, his hands are tied." Cole didn't mention that he'd been a witness to something almost as damning. The conversation he'd overheard wasn't a confession, but it was close, and he knew from the tight edge in Sienna's voice that she was counting on him to deliver it at the hearing. On Monday night, the night before the hearing, Cole couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through everything that could go wrong. Helix's lawyers would attack his credibility. They'd point out that he had no proof beyond his word. They'd paint him as someone with a grudge or a hero complex. And maybe they'd be right. Maybe he was just a guy who couldn't let things go, even when letting go was the smart choice. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Sienna. "You still good for tomorrow?" Cole stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it." Cole didn't respond to that. He set the phone down and closed his eyes, trying to force himself to sleep. But all he could think about was the hearing, and the men from Helix, and the fire that had almost killed them both. The county administrative building was an unremarkable concrete structure that looked like it had been built in the 70s and forgotten about since. Cole arrived early, dressed in the only button-down shirt he owned that didn't have stains on it, and found Sienna waiting in the lobby. She was in a wheelchair now, her crutches folded across her lap, and she looked pale but determined. "You ready?" she asked. "No. You?" Not even a little bit. They shared a brief, grim smile, and then Sienna wheeled herself toward the hearing room. Cole followed, his stomach twisting itself into knots. The room was already half full. Reporters, local officials, a few environmental activists holding signs, and, at the front near the panel table, a group of men in expensive suits who could only be Helix's legal team. They looked calm, confident, like this was just another day at the office. Cole found a seat near the back while Sienna positioned herself at the front, near the microphone reserved for public comment. The hearing started exactly at 10, and for the first 20 minutes, it was just procedural stuff. Budget reports, environmental impact summaries, statements from county officials. Cole barely paid attention. He was too busy watching the Helix lawyers, trying to read their body language. They didn't look worried. If anything, they looked bored. Then Sienna's name was called for public comment. She wheeled herself forward, adjusted the microphone, and began. Her voice was steady, professional, but there was an undercurrent of anger that Cole recognized. She laid out her case methodically. The altered survey markers, the GPS coordinates, the fraudulent land transfers. She showed photos on a projector screen, side-by-side comparisons that were impossible to ignore. The room went quiet. Even the Helix lawyers stopped looking bored. When she finished, one of the panel members, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Ms. Vale, these are serious accusations. Do you have any corroborating evidence? Witnesses? Anything beyond your own analysis?" Sienna glanced back at Cole, and he felt every eye in the room turn toward him. This was it. His moment to either back her up or walk away. Cole stood, his legs feeling unsteady, and walked to the front of the room. "I'm Cole Grayson. I pulled Ms. Vale off the mountain during the wildfire, and I heard 2 men from Helix Development admit that the fire was set intentionally to destroy evidence." The room erupted. Reporters started shouting questions, the Helix lawyers jumped to their feet, and the panel members banged their gavels for order. Cole stood there, feeling exposed and reckless and strangely calm. He'd just thrown a grenade into the middle of the hearing, and there was no taking it back now. One of the Helix lawyers, a sharp-faced woman with perfectly styled hair, stepped forward. "That's a slanderous accusation with no basis in fact. Mr. Grayson has no proof, no recording, nothing but his word. And given that he was trespassing on restricted property at the time, his testimony is highly questionable." "I know what I heard," Cole said. "Convenient. And did you happen to record this alleged conversation?" "No." "Did anyone else witness it?" "No, Cam." "Then you're asking this panel to take the word of a volunteer firefighter with no legal training and a documented history of—" She paused, consulting a folder in her hand. "Financial instability and prior arrests for trespassing." Cole felt his face flush. "That was 10 years ago. I was protesting illegal logging." "Illegal in your opinion." The courts disagreed. "The point is, Mr. Grayson, you have a history of making unfounded accusations against corporations you personally disagree with. This appears to be more of the same." Sienna cut in, her voice sharp. "He saved my life. He has no reason to lie." "Doesn't he?" The lawyer turned to face the panel. "Ms. Vale is a well-known environmental activist with a vendetta against development projects. It's entirely possible that Mr. Grayson is either mistaken or deliberately fabricating this story to support her agenda." Cole opened his mouth to argue, but the panel chairman banged his gavel again. "That's enough. This hearing is adjourned pending further investigation. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Umski." And just like that, it was over. The room erupted into chaos again, and Cole felt Sienna's hand grab his arm. "Come on, we need to get out of here." They pushed through the crowd, reporters shouting questions, and made it to the parking lot. Cole's hands were shaking. He hadn't expected it to go smoothly, but he also hadn't expected to be publicly humiliated and have his entire past dragged through the mud. "I'm sorry," Sienna said. "I didn't know they'd do that." "It's fine." "It's not fine. They just destroyed your credibility." "Yeah, well, wouldn't be the first time." Sienna looked at him, and there was something raw in her expression. Guilt, maybe. Or just the realization that she dragged him into something that was going to cost him more than either of them had anticipated. What do we do now? Cole didn't have an answer. He looked back at the building, at the reporters still swarming the entrance, and felt a cold certainty settle over him. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, Cole came home to find his front door unlocked. He always locked it. Always. He pushed it open slowly, every muscle in his body tense, and stepped inside. The living room looked normal, nothing out of place, but something felt wrong. "Max?" he called out. No answer. Panic hit him like a freight train. He ran through the house, checking every room, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Max's room was empty. So was the kitchen, the bathroom. Cole was about to call the police when he heard voices outside. He ran to the backyard and found Max sitting on the porch steps with Mrs. Patterson. Relief flooded through him so fast he nearly collapsed. "Dad!" Max jumped up and ran to him. "Mrs. Patterson said someone was at the house earlier. A man. He was looking through the windows." Cole's blood ran cold. He looked at Mrs. Patterson, who nodded grimly. "I saw him from my kitchen. Big guy. Dark jacket. He tried the front door, then walked around back. I called out to him, asked if he needed help, and he took off. I brought Max over to my place just in case." "Did you call the police?" "I did. They came by, looked around, didn't find anything. Said it was probably just someone looking for an empty house to rob." Cole didn't believe that for a second. He knew exactly who it was, or at least who'd sent them. Helix Development wasn't messing around. They just sent him a message. "Back off, or next time it won't be a warning." "Thanks, Mrs. Patterson," Cole said, his voice tight. "I owe you, again. You don't owe me anything. Just keep that boy safe." She did so. After she left, Cole locked every door and window in the house, checked them twice, and then sat Max down at the kitchen table. "I need you to listen to me, okay?" Max nodded, his eyes wide and worried. "For the next few days, you're going to stay with Mrs. Patterson after school. Don't come home until I come get you, and if anyone you don't know tries to talk to you, you run. You understand?" "Dad, you're scaring me. I know, I'm sorry, but I need you to promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." Cole pulled him into a hug, holding him tight, and tried to ignore the fear clawing at his chest. He'd thought standing up at the hearing was the hard part, but now he realized that was just the beginning. Helix had just shown him what they were capable of, and if he didn't back down, things were going to get worse. He thought about calling Sienna, warning her, but his phone buzzed before he could. A text from an unknown number, no words, just a photo. It was Max's school, taken from across the street. A close-up of the playground. Cole's hands shook as he stared at the screen. They were threatening his son now. They weren't even trying to be subtle about it. He called Sienna. She answered on the first ring. "Cole? What's wrong?" "Someone broke into my house, or tried to, and they just sent me a picture of Max's school." Silence on the other end, then quietly, "I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this." "I know, but we can't back down now. If we do, they win, and they'll do this to someone else." "I don't care about someone else. I care about my kid." "I know, but think about what you're teaching him. You told me once that being scared doesn't mean you stop. It just means you keep going even when it's hard." Cole closed his eyes, hating that she was using his own words against him. "That's different." "How?" "Because this isn't just about me anymore. It never was just about you, Cole. It's about doing what's right. And I think you know that, or you wouldn't have stood up at the hearing." Cole didn't respond. He ended the call and sat there in the dark kitchen, staring at the photo on his phone. He wanted to run, pack a bag, grab Max, and disappear somewhere far away where Helix Development couldn't find them. But he knew that wasn't how this worked. Running didn't solve problems. It just delayed them. He thought about Max's question from the other night. "Are you scared of stuff sometimes?" "Yeah, buddy, I'm scared right now, more scared than I've been in years. But I'm going to do it anyway." "Because that's what you do. You keep going, even when it's terrifying." Cole deleted the photo, blocked the number, and went to check on Max. His son was already asleep, curled up under his blankets, blissfully unaware of how close danger had just come. Cole stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching him breathe, and made another decision. He wasn't backing down, but he also wasn't going to wait around for Helix to make the next move. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one, just not the fight they were expecting. The next morning, Cole called Detective Hale and told him everything. The conversation on the mountain, the break-in attempt, the photo. To his credit, the detective didn't dismiss him outright. He listened, asked questions, and promised to look into it. "Off the record, Blunt," the detective said. "You're playing a dangerous game here. These people have resources, connections. If you push too hard, they're going to push back harder. They already are. Then maybe it's time to let us handle it." "With all due respect, Detective, you've been handling it. And so far nothing's happened." There was a pause. "Fair point. All right, I'll see what I can do. But in the meantime, watch your back." Cole promised he would, and hung up. He didn't know if the detective would actually help or if he was just placating him, but at least it was on the record now. If something happened to him or Max, there'd be a trail. Sienna called an hour later. "I've been thinking. We need more evidence, something concrete that ties Helix directly to the arson." "Like what?" "Financial records. If they paid someone to set the fire, there'll be a paper trail, bank transfers, invoices, something. And how are we supposed to get that? I have a friend who works in forensic accounting. She owes me a favor. If I can get her access to Helix's financial records, she might be able to find something. That's illegal." So is arson. Cole couldn't argue with that logic, as much as he wanted to. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing yet, just stay safe, and keep your phone on. If I find something, I'll let you know." The call ended and Cole sat back, feeling the exhaustion settle into his bones. He was in over his head, way over. But he was also too far in to turn back now. That afternoon, while Max was at Mrs. Patterson's house, Cole went for a drive. He didn't have a destination in mind. He just needed to move, to think, to process everything that had happened in the last week. He ended up at the old overlook near Ridgefall, the place where he used to take Max when he was younger to watch the sunset. The view was different now. Half the mountain was blackened, the forest reduced to skeletal remains. It looked like a scar, raw and ugly, and Cole felt a surge of anger looking at it. Helix had done this. They destroyed something beautiful, just to line their pockets, and they were getting away with it. Not if I can help it, Cole thought. And then he drove home, ready for whatever came next. 3 days after the hearing, Sienna's forensic accountant friend came through. Her name was Rachel Kim, and she'd spent the better part of 72 hours digging through Helix Development's financial records using methods that Cole suspected were barely legal. When Sienna called him with the news, her voice was electric with vindication. "She found it," Sienna said. "A wire transfer for $50,000 to a shell company 2 days before the fire. The shell company is registered to a man named Derek Moss. He's got a record, arson for hire." Cole was sitting in his truck outside Max's school, waiting for dismissal. That's enough to take to the police. It's enough to start an investigation, but we need more. Rachel's still digging. She thinks there might be communications, emails, texts, between Helix executives and Moss. If she can find those, we've got them dead to rights. How long? A few more days? Maybe a week? Cole watched kids streaming out of the school building, laughing and shoving each other, completely oblivious to the weight pressing down on the adults in their lives. They're not going to wait that long. They already tried to intimidate me. What's stopping them from doing worse? I know. That's why I'm calling. I think you and Max should stay somewhere else for a while. Somewhere they can't find you. I'm not running. It's not running. It's being smart. Same thing, hiss. Sienna was quiet for a moment, and Cole could hear the frustration in her silence. You're not doing your son any favors by being stubborn. That hit harder than Cole wanted to admit. He spotted Max coming through the doors, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders, and felt that familiar tightness in his chest. Max deserved better than this. Better than a father who dragged him into dangerous situations because he couldn't let things go. I'll think about it, Cole said. Please do. And Cole, thank you for everything. I know this isn't what you signed up for. Yeah, you keep saying that. After the call ended, Cole picked up Max and drove them to the diner on Main Street, the one with the good milkshakes and the booths that smelled like old vinyl. They ordered burgers and fries, and Max chattered about his day, something about a science project involving volcanoes. Cole tried to focus, tried to be present, but his mind kept drifting back to Derek Moss and shell companies and wire transfers. "Dad, you're not listening," Max said, pulling him back. "Sorry, buddy. I'm listening now." "I said Mr. Henderson wants us to bring in pictures for our family tree project. Do we have any pictures of Mom?" Cole's throat tightened. They didn't talk about Sarah much anymore. Not because Cole didn't want to, but because it hurt, and Max was too young to understand that some kinds of hurt never really went away. They just became part of the landscape. "Yeah, we've got some. I'll help you find them tonight." "Okay." Max took a long pull from his milkshake, then added, "Mrs. Patterson says you've been stressed lately. Mrs. Patterson talks too much. Are you stressed?" Cole looked at his son, at those big eyes that saw more than they should, and decided to be honest. "Yeah, a little bit, but it's nothing you need to worry about. Is it because of the lady you saved? From the fire?" "Kind of." "Is she in trouble?" "Sort of, but we're working on it." Max seemed satisfied with that answer, which was more than Cole had expected. They finished their meal in comfortable silence, and when they got back to the house, Cole helped Max dig through the box of photos in the closet. They found a good one of Sarah, smiling at the camera with Max as a baby in her arms. Cole stared at it longer than he should have, remembering things he'd tried to forget. The way she laughed, the way she used to make everything feel lighter, easier. And then the way she'd gotten sick and how fast it had all fallen apart. "She was pretty," Max said. "Yeah, she was." "Do you miss her?" "Every day." Max nodded, like that made sense to him, and carefully placed the photo in his backpack. Then he hugged Cole, quick and fierce, before running off to his room to finish his homework. Cole stood there in the hallway, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him, and wondered if Sarah would be proud of what he was doing, or if she'd tell him he was being an idiot. Probably both, he thought. That night after Max was asleep, Cole got another call. This time it was Detective Hale, and his tone was different, urgent. "We need to talk. In person. Can you meet me?" "When?" "Now. There's a coffee shop on 5th and Maple. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Cole didn't like the sound of that, but he agreed. He asked Mrs. Patterson to keep an ear out for Max, then drove to the coffee shop. It was nearly empty, just a couple of college kids hunched over laptops and a tired-looking barista wiping down tables. Detective Hale was sitting in the back corner, a cup of coffee cooling in front of him. Cole slid into the booth across from him. "What's going on?" "What's sport?" "Orsa. We got a hit on Derek Moss, the guy you mentioned. Turns out he's been in the area, checked into a motel about 30 miles from here 3 days before the fire. Checked out the day after." "So he said it." "We don't know that for sure yet, but we're looking into it. Problem is, he's gone, disappeared. No credit card activity, no phone pings, nothing. Either he's lying low or someone helped him vanish." "Helix. Maybe. But here's the thing." The detective leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I ran your name through the system after you called, and I found something interesting. Someone else has been running searches on you too. Multiple times over the last week. Deep background checks, financial records, even your kid's school registration." "Oh." Cole felt ice slide down his spine. "Who?" "The searches were routed through a private security firm called Sentinel Solutions. They do corporate security, investigations, that kind of thing. And guess who's one of their biggest clients?" "Or Helix Eats." "Bingo." Cole sat back, his mind racing. They weren't just trying to scare him anymore. They were building a file, figuring out his vulnerabilities, his weak points. And the biggest weak point he had was sitting at home in his bed right now, completely unaware that dangerous people were circling his life like sharks. "What do I do?" Cole asked. "Honestly, you back off. Let us handle this. We're building a case now. It's going to take time, but we'll get there." "And in the meantime, what? I just sit around and wait for them to make a move?" "You protect your kid. That's what you do. Everything else is secondary." The detective was right, and Cole hated him for it. He finished the coffee he hadn't ordered, thanked Hale, and drove home. When he walked through the front door, he stood in the dark living room for a long time, just listening to the house settle around him. Then he pulled out his phone and texted Sienna. "You were right. Max and I are leaving town for a few days. I'll let you know where we end up." Her response came almost immediately. "Good. Be safe. I'll keep you posted on what Rachel finds." Cole didn't reply. He went upstairs, packed a bag for himself and Max, and tried to figure out where they could go that would be far enough away to matter. He had a cousin in Idaho, someone he hadn't seen in years, but who owed him a favor. That might work. Or maybe they'd just drive until they ran out of road and figure it out from there. But when he walked past Max's room and saw his son sleeping peacefully, clutching a stuffed dinosaur that was missing one arm, Cole felt something shift inside him. He'd spent the last 6 years building a life for Max. A safe, stable life, where the biggest problem was homework and dentist appointments. And now he was about to uproot that life because powerful people wanted to protect their billion-dollar deal. No, Cole thought. No, I'm not doing that. He unpacked the bags. Geets. The next morning, Cole called Sienna and told her he'd changed his mind. She didn't argue, which surprised him. "I figured you would," she said. "You're not the running type." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're stubborn, in a good way, mostly." "Yeah, well, stubborn doesn't keep my kids safe. Neither does running. Not if Helix is as committed to this as we think they are. They'll find you eventually. Better to face them head on while we still have momentum." Cole wasn't sure he agreed, but he didn't have the energy to argue. "What's the plan?" "Rachel's close to finding the communication records. Once she does, we take everything to the detective. Push him to move faster, and if he won't, we go public. Leak the story to the press. Force Helix to respond. That'll put an even bigger target on us. It will. But it'll also make it harder for them to act. Right now, they can operate in the shadows. But if this becomes a national story, every move they make will be scrutinized." Cole thought about that. It was risky, maybe reckless, but it also made a certain kind of sense. "All right, let me know when Rachel's ready." "I will." "And Cole, I meant what I said. You're not the running type. That's why I trust you." The call ended and Cole sat there feeling the weight of her words. Trust. Such a simple thing, but it mattered. He'd spent so many years living small, keeping his head down, avoiding complications. And now here he was, neck deep in the biggest complication of his life. And the strange thing was, he didn't want out. Not anymore. He wanted to see this through. For Sienna. For Max. For himself. He spent the rest of the day trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. He did laundry. He fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom that he'd been ignoring for weeks. He played catch with Max in the backyard until the sun started to set. And the whole time, he kept his phone close, waiting for Sienna's call. It came at 9:30 that night, right after he'd put Max to bed. "We've got it," Sienna said, her voice breathless. Rachel found emails between a Helix VP named Gregory Stanton and Derek Moss. They're coded, but not well, talking about eliminating the liability and cleaning up the site. There's even a reference to me by name. They wanted me gone, Cole, and they were willing to burn down half a mountain to do it. Cole's grip tightened on the phone. "Send it to the detective." "Already done. I sent him everything an hour ago. He said he's taking it to the DA in the morning." "That's good. That's really good." "It is. But there's something else." Rachel flagged another transfer. "This one happened yesterday. Another 50,000, same shell company, which means they hired Moss again, or someone like him." Cole felt his blood run cold. "For what?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's happening soon. You need to get somewhere safe." "I'm already at a different hotel, under a fake name. What about you?" "I'll be fine." "Cole, I said I'll be fine." He ended the call before she could argue and immediately checked all the locks on the doors and windows. Then he went to the closet and pulled out the baseball bat he kept there, the one he'd bought years ago after a rash of break-ins in the neighborhood. He hadn't needed it then, but he had a feeling he might need it now. Cole didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch with the bat across his lap, staring at the front door, and waited. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. 1 in the morning, 2. Nothing happened. No sounds, no movement, No sign of danger. But Cole couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, that the quiet was just the calm before the storm. At 3:15, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words, just a video file. Cole's hand shook as he opened it. The video showed Max's school, the playground, empty in the early morning darkness. The camera panned slowly across the monkey bars, the swings, the slide, and then it focused on a car parked across the street. A dark sedan with tinted windows, the kind of car that didn't belong in a quiet neighborhood at 3 in the morning. The message was clear. We know where your son goes to school. We can get to him anytime we want. Cole stared at the screen, rage and fear warring inside him, and made a decision. He wasn't waiting anymore. He wasn't playing defense. If Helix wanted a fight, he'd give them one. But on his terms. He called Detective Hale, even though it was the middle of the night. The detective answered on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep. This better be important. They just sent me a video of my kid's school, with a car parked outside. I need protection. Hale was silent for a moment, and Cole could hear rustling on the other end, like he was sitting up. Send me the video. Cole did. A few seconds later, Hale swore under his breath. Phew, I'll have a patrol car swing by your house, and we'll station someone at the school tomorrow. That's not enough. It's all I can do right now. We're moving as fast as we can, but these things take time. I don't have time. I understand, but rushing this will only make it worse. Just sit tight. We're close. Cole wanted to throw the phone across the room. Sit tight. Like that was even an option. But he forced himself to stay calm, thanked the detective, and hung up. Then he called Sienna back. I need you to do something for me, Cole said when she answered. What? Leak the story. Tonight. Everything Rachel found. I don't care if it's messy or incomplete. Just get it out there. Now. Cole, if we do that, there's no going back. It'll be a media circus, and Helix will come at us with everything they've got. They're already coming at me, at my kid. I'm done waiting for the system to work. Let's force their hand. Sienna was quiet for a long moment. Okay, I'll make some calls. By morning, this will be everywhere. Good. And Cole, you're doing the right thing. I hope so. Tisek. By sunrise, the story was breaking. Sienna had contacted a journalist friend who worked for a major news network, and within hours, the allegations against Helix Development were headline news. Arson, fraud, intimidation, the wire transfers to Derek Moss, the emails from Gregory Stanton, all of it laid bare for the world to see. Cole watched the coverage from his living room, Max still asleep upstairs, and felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. They'd done it. They'd exposed Helix. But now came the fallout. His phone started ringing almost immediately. Reporters, mostly, asking for interviews. Cole ignored them all. Then Detective Hale called. You've got a hell of a lot of nerve, Hale said, but there wasn't anger in his voice, just resignation. You just blew up an active investigation. I gave you time. You didn't move fast enough. We were building a case. Now it's going to be 10 times harder to prosecute because everything's public. Defense lawyers are going to have a field day. At least they'll have to answer for it. Hale sighed. Yeah, at least there's that. For what it's worth, the DA's filing charges this morning. Stanton and 2 other Helix executives. Conspiracy, arson, fraud. We've also issued a warrant for Derek Moss. That's a start. It is. But you need to be prepared for what comes next. Helix is going to fight this with everything they've got. And they're going to come after you and Sienna hard. Let them try. The call ended, and Cole sat back, exhausted but oddly calm. He'd done what he could. The rest was out of his hands now. Max wandered downstairs an hour later, rubbing his eyes. Why's the TV so loud? Cole turned it off. Just the news. You hungry? Yeah. They made pancakes together, and for a few minutes, Cole let himself pretend that everything was normal. That they were just a father and son having breakfast on a weekday morning. But then his phone buzzed again, and he saw a text from Sienna. Gregory Stanton just held a press conference. He's denying everything. Says we fabricated the evidence. That you and I are conspiring to sabotage Helix because of personal vendettas. Cole read the message twice, feeling his jaw tighten. Of course Stanton was denying it. That's what powerful people did. They lied, they deflected, they played the victim. But the evidence was out there now, public record, and no amount of spin could erase that. Let him deny it, Cole typed back. The truth is the truth. Sienna's response came quickly. Agreed, but this is going to get ugly before it gets better. Cole didn't doubt that. He finished breakfast with Max, got him ready for school, and walked him to the bus stop. A patrol car was parked nearby, just like Hale had promised. The officer inside gave Cole a nod, and Cole felt a small measure of relief. As the bus pulled away with Max safely on board, Cole stood there on the sidewalk and looked up at the sky. It was a clear day, the kind that felt full of possibility. And for the first time in weeks, Cole allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to make it through this. The next few days were chaos. Helix's legal team filed motions to dismiss the charges. Stanton gave more interviews, painting himself as the victim of a smear campaign. But the evidence kept mounting. More journalists dug into Helix's business practices and found a pattern of corruption stretching back years. Environmental violations, bribery, intimidation tactics. The company was hemorrhaging credibility, and their stock price reflected it. Cole kept his head down, avoided the press, and focused on Max. School, homework, dinner, bedtime. The routines that anchored his life. But he also stayed in close contact with Sienna, who'd become something more than just the woman he'd pulled off a burning mountain. She was a partner now, someone he trusted, someone who understood what it meant to fight for something bigger than yourself. On the 5th day after the story broke, Detective Hale called again. We found Derek Moss, he said. He was hiding out in a cabin near the state line. Arrested him this morning, and he's talking. Talking about what? Everything. He's giving up Stanton, the other Helix executives, the whole operation. Says they promised him immunity if he kept quiet, but now that the story's public, he figures his best shot is cooperation. Cole felt a surge of triumph. That's it then. You've got them. Yeah, we do. The DA's office is moving forward with the prosecution. It's going to be a long process, but we've got enough to make charges stick. What about me and Sienna? Are we safe now? I'd say so. With Moss in custody and the investigation public, there's no incentive for Helix to come after you. They've got bigger problems. Cole thanked him and ended the call. Then he texted Sienna. Moss was arrested. He's cooperating. It's over. Her response was immediate. We did it. Yeah, we did. Cole sat there for a long moment, letting the weight of the last few weeks finally lift off his shoulders. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, against powerful people with unlimited resources, they'd won. Not because they were smarter or stronger, but because they'd refused to quit. That night, Cole took Max out for pizza to celebrate. He didn't tell his son the details. He was too young for that. But he wanted to mark the occasion somehow. And as they sat in his booth eating pepperoni slices and talking about nothing in particular, Cole felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real, unshakable hope that things were going to be okay. 2 weeks after Derek Moss was arrested, Cole stood in the back of a crowded courthouse gallery and watched Gregory Stanton walk past in handcuffs. The Helix VP looked smaller somehow, diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his expensive haircut doing nothing to hide the exhaustion on his face. 2 other executives followed behind him, equally defeated, and the gallery erupted in whispers and camera flashes. Cole didn't feel triumphant watching them. He just felt tired and relieved that it was finally over. Sienna was sitting 3 rows ahead, her legs still in a brace, but looking stronger than she had in weeks. She turned and caught Cole's eye, offering a small smile. He nodded back. They'd talked on the phone almost every day since the arrests, but this was the first time they'd been in the same room since everything went public. There was something unspoken between them now, something neither of them had quite figured out how to name. The arraignment lasted less than 20 minutes. All 3 men pleaded not guilty, which surprised no one. Their lawyers were already spinning the narrative, talking about procedural errors and unreliable witnesses. But the evidence was overwhelming. Wire transfers, emails, Derek Moss's testimony, the forensic analysis of the fire. The prosecution had built a case so airtight that even the best legal team in the country would struggle to crack it. After the hearing ended, Cole waited outside the courthouse while Sienna navigated the crowd of reporters on her crutches. She handled them with the kind of practiced confidence that came from years of public speaking, answering questions without giving away too much. Cole stayed back, avoiding the cameras. He'd had his 15 minutes of fame at the county hearing, and that had been more than enough. When Sienna finally broke free, she limped over to where Cole was standing under a tree, away from the chaos. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I know, wanted to see it through." "Me too." She adjusted her crutches and looked back at the courthouse. "It's strange, isn't it? All this time fighting, and now it's just legal proceedings, paperwork, waiting. That's how the system works." "I know, but it feels anticlimactic." Cole understood what she meant. They'd spent weeks running on adrenaline and fear, making split-second decisions that could have gotten them killed. And now the most dangerous thing they faced was sitting in a courtroom listening to lawyers argue procedural motions. It should have felt like a relief. And it did, mostly. But there was also a sense of deflation, like they'd been fighting so hard for so long that they didn't know what to do now that the fight was over. "You heading back to work?" Cole asked. "Eventually. My company's been patient, but I've been on leave for almost a month now. I need to get back before they decide they don't need me anymore." She paused, then added, "What about you? Back to rescue work?" "Yeah. Got a call last week about a missing hiker up near Coldwater Ridge. Nothing as dramatic as a wildfire, but it felt good to be useful again." Sienna studied him for a moment, and Cole felt that familiar discomfort under her gaze. She had a way of looking at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You know, I never properly thanked you. You thanked me about 100 times. Not for saving my life. I mean, yes, for that too. But for standing up at the hearing, for putting yourself and your son at risk when you didn't have to. Most people wouldn't have done that." Cole shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the praise. "Most people probably would have been smarter." "Maybe. But smart isn't always the same as right." They stood there in silence for a moment, and Cole realized he didn't want the conversation to end. Over the past few weeks, Sienna had become more than just someone he'd helped. She was someone who understood a part of him that most people didn't see, the part that couldn't walk away when something was wrong, even when walking away was the sensible choice. "I've been thinking," Sienna said carefully. "Once this is all over, the trial, the recovery, I'd like to take you and Max somewhere. A thank you. A real one." "You don't need to do that." "I know I don't need to. I want to. Unless you've got something against free vacations." Cole almost smiled. "Where were you thinking?" "There's a lake resort about 2 hours north of here. Quiet, peaceful, far away from burning mountains and corporate fraud. I thought maybe a long weekend. Give Max a chance to do some fishing. Give us a chance to decompress." Cole thought about it. The idea of getting away, of spending time somewhere that didn't carry the weight of everything they'd been through, sounded better than he wanted to admit. "Let me think about it. That's not a no. It's not a yes either." Sienna smiled, and Cole realized he liked seeing her smile. It softened something in her face that was usually guarded, made her look less like a CEO and more like someone who'd been through hell and somehow made it out the other side. "Fair enough. The offer stands whenever you're ready." They said their goodbyes, and Cole drove home feeling lighter than he had in weeks. The house was quiet when he arrived. Max was at school. Mrs. Patterson was probably tending to her garden, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Cole had the place to himself. He made a sandwich, ate it standing at the kitchen counter, and then did something he hadn't done in years. He sat down on the couch in the middle of the afternoon and just existed. No urgent calls to return, no fires to fight, no threats hanging over his head, just quiet. His phone buzzed after about 20 minutes, breaking the spell. It was Detective Hale. "Just wanted to give you an update," the detective said. "The DA's office is officially moving forward with the prosecution. Trial's set for next spring. They'll need you and Ms. Vale to testify." Expected that. I figured, but there's something else. Helix Development filed for bankruptcy this morning. The board voted to dissolve the company. Between the criminal charges, the civil lawsuits, and the stock collapse, there's nothing left to save. Cole absorbed that information. Helix Development, the billion-dollar corporation that had seemed untouchable just a few weeks ago, was gone. Not just defeated, but erased. What happens to the Ridgefall project? Dead in the water. The land reverts back to protected status. No development, no resort, no golf courses. It's over. Good. Yeah, it is. Hale paused, then added, You did a good thing here, Cole. I know it didn't feel like it at the time, but you did. After the call ended, Cole sat there staring at his phone and trying to process what he was feeling. Relief, definitely. Vindication, maybe. But also something else. Something that felt like grief, though he couldn't quite explain why. Maybe it was because he'd spent so much time fighting that he didn't know what to do now that the fight was over. Or maybe it was because winning didn't erase the cost. The sleepless nights, the fear, the way Max had looked at him when he'd asked if everything was okay. Those things didn't just disappear because the bad guys got arrested. Cole thought about Sarah then, the way he sometimes did when life got too heavy. She'd been gone for 4 years, but her absence was still a presence in his life, something he carried with him everywhere. He wondered what she would have made of all this. Probably would have told him he was an idiot for getting involved, but she also would have understood why he couldn't walk away. Sarah had been like that too, stubborn in the best possible way, unwilling to compromise when it came to the things that mattered. I wish you were here, Cole said out loud to the empty room, and then immediately felt ridiculous. But the words hung in the air anyway, and for just a moment, it felt like she was, yeah. That weekend, Cole took Max to the overlook near Ridgefall, the same spot where he'd stood weeks earlier, staring at the burned forest. The view was different now. Early autumn rain had started coaxing new growth from the scorched earth, small green shoots pushing through the ash. It would take years for the forest to fully recover, maybe decades, but the life was coming back. Slowly, stubbornly, but coming back nonetheless. Max scrambled up onto a flat rock and pointed at the new growth. Look, Dad, it's not all dead. No, it's not. Will it be okay? The forest? Yeah, buddy, I think it will. They sat there for a while, father and son, watching the wind move through the recovering trees. Max asked questions about how forests regenerated after fires, and Cole answered as best he could, explaining about seeds that needed heat to germinate and how some ecosystems actually depended on periodic burns. Max listened with this kind of intense focus kids brought to things that interested them, and Cole felt grateful for the distraction. Talking about ecology was easier than thinking about everything else. Dad? Max said after a while. Yeah? Mrs. Patterson says you're a hero. Cole almost laughed. Mrs. Patterson says a lot of things. But are you a hero? Cole thought about how to answer that. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who'd stumbled into a bad situation and somehow managed not to make it worse. But looking at his son, at those earnest eyes waiting for an answer, Cole realized the truth didn't matter as much as what Max needed to hear. I think heroes are just people who do the right thing when it's hard, Cole said finally. And yeah, I guess I did that. But so did a lot of other people. Sienna, the detective, even Mrs. Patterson when she protected you. Heroism isn't one big moment. It's a bunch of small choices. Max seemed to consider that. I want to be a hero someday. You already are, buddy. Every time you stand up for someone at school, or help a friend, or do the right thing even when it's scary. That's all it takes. They stayed at the overlook until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Cole too much of fire. But this time, the memory didn't scare him. It just existed, part of the landscape of his life now. Neither good nor bad, just true. 3 weeks later, Cole found himself packing bags for the trip to the lake resort. He'd called Sienna and told her yes, they'd come, and she'd sounded genuinely happy. Max was excited in his way only 6-year-olds could be, bouncing around the house asking questions about whether there'd be boats, and if he could swim even though the water would probably be cold. The drive north was peaceful. Mountains gave way to rolling hills, and the air got crisper as they climbed in elevation. Sienna had texted them the address, and when they arrived, Cole was impressed despite himself. The resort was modest but beautiful, tucked into a valley with the lake spreading out like glass in front of it. Sienna was waiting on the porch of one of the cabins, her leg brace gone, though she still walked with a slight limp. You made it, she said, smiling. Traffic wasn't bad. Cole grabbed their bags from the truck while Max ran ahead, already exploring. I got us 2 cabins. Figured you'd want your own space. Mine's the one on the left. Yours is on the right. They've got a dock with kayaks if Max wants to try them out. He'll love that. They settled in, and for the next few days, Cole let himself exist in a space he hadn't occupied in years. No obligations, no emergencies, no weight pressing down on him. They took the kayaks out on the lake, Max sitting in front of Cole's boat and squealing every time they hit a wake. They hiked easy trails through the surrounding forest, and Sienna taught Max how to identify different types of trees. In the evenings, they cooked dinner together in Sienna's cabin. Nothing fancy, just burgers and pasta, and talked about things that had nothing to do with fires or fraud or legal battles. On the third night, after Max had fallen asleep in their cabin, Cole walked down to the dock and found Sienna sitting there, her feet dangling over the water. The moon was full, reflecting off the lake like a second light source. "Mind if I join you?" Cole asked. "Please." He sat down beside her, and for a while they didn't speak. The silence between them was comfortable now, not weighted with all the things they weren't saying. Just two people who'd been through something difficult and made it out the other side. "I've been thinking about what comes next," Sienna said eventually. "For me, I mean. And? I don't know. Part of me wants to go back to my company, pick up where I left off. But another part of me wonders if I want something different, something that feels more meaningful. If fighting corporate fraud wasn't meaningful enough? Mom, it's... Sienna smiled. It was. But it was also terrifying and exhausting, and I'm not sure I want to spend the rest of my career doing that. I've been thinking about teaching. Environmental engineering at the university level. Shaping the next generation instead of fighting the current one. You'd be good at that. You think so? Yeah, you've got the passion for it. And you're stubborn enough to deal with college kids. Sienna laughed, and the sound carried across the water. What about you? What comes next for Cole Grayson? Cole thought about it. For so long, his life had been about survival. Getting through each day, taking care of Max, keeping their heads above water. But somewhere along the way, in the middle of all the chaos, he'd remembered what it felt like to care about something beyond just survival. To fight for something bigger than himself. I don't know, Cole said honestly. Keep doing rescue work. Keep raising Max. Maybe stop being so afraid of letting people in. Is that what you've been doing? Keeping people out? Yeah. Since Sarah died, it's been easier that way. Less complicated. And now? Cole looked at Sienna, at the way the moonlight caught in her hair, and felt something shift inside him. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The recognition that maybe his life didn't have to be defined by loss and fear, that maybe there was room for something new. Now I'm thinking maybe complicated isn't always bad, he said. Sienna held his gaze, and Cole saw understanding there. She wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding anything, just offering a door that he could walk through if he wanted to. And for the first time in years, Cole thought he might. I'm glad you came, Sienna said quietly. Me too. They sat there for another hour, talking about nothing and everything. And when Cole finally walked back to his cabin, he felt lighter. Not fixed, because people didn't get fixed like broken appliances, but better, more whole, and that was enough. Geek. The last morning at the lake, Cole woke up early and found Max already awake, sitting on the porch of their cabin with a book. The kid looked up when Cole stepped outside. Morning, Dad. Morning, buddy. What are you reading? A book about firefighters. Mrs. Patterson got it for me. Cole sat down beside him. You thinking about becoming a firefighter? Maybe. Or a rescuer like you. Someone who helps people. Cole felt his chest tighten. That's a good goal. Did you always want to do that? Help people? Not always. When I was your age, I wanted to be a baseball player. But things change. You grow up, you figure out what matters to you. Max nodded seriously, processing that. I think helping people matters. It does, but it's not always easy. Sometimes it's scary, and sometimes people don't appreciate it. And sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. Is it worth it? Cole thought about the wildfire, about carrying Sienna down the mountain, about standing up at the hearing when every instinct told him to run. He thought about the photo of Max's school, the sleepless nights, the fear that had consumed him for weeks. And then he thought about Helix development dissolving, about the forest starting to recover, about Sienna sitting beside him on the dock talking about the future. Yeah, see, Cole said. It's worth it. But they packed up after breakfast, said their goodbyes to Sienna, and made the drive home. Max fell asleep in the passenger seat halfway through, and Cole drove in comfortable silence, thinking about everything that had happened over the past 2 months. His life had been upended, turned inside out, and forced to confront things he'd been avoiding for years. But somehow, impossibly, he'd come through it okay. More than okay. He'd come through it changed. When they got home, Mrs. Patterson was waiting on her porch, waving. Cole waved back, feeling grateful for her presence in their lives. For all the people who'd shown up when it mattered. Detective Hale, Rachel Kim, even the patrol officer who'd sat outside Max's school. Community wasn't just a word. It was a safety net. And Cole had been lucky enough to have one when he needed it most. That night, after Max was asleep, Cole sat at the kitchen table with a beer and thought about Sienna. She'd texted him earlier, a simple message. Thanks for coming. Let's not wait another wildfire to see each other again. Cole had smiled reading it, and now he pulled out his phone and typed a response. Dinner next week? I know a place with good burgers. Her reply came almost immediately. I'd like that. Cole set the phone down and leaned back in his chair, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, but actual excitement about the future. He wasn't naive enough to think everything would be perfect. Life didn't work that way. There would be bills to pay, problems to solve, bad days and setbacks. But there would also be good days. Days like the ones at the lake. Days where Max laughed and Sienna smiled, and Cole allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved something good. 6 months later, Cole stood in another courthouse, this time as a witness in the trial against Gregory Stanton and the other Helix executives. He testified for 2 hours, recounting everything he'd seen and heard on the mountain. The defense lawyers tried to poke holes in his story, questioning his memory and his motivations, but Cole stuck to the truth. And the truth, it turned out, was enough. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Stanton got 15 years. The other executives got similar sentences. Derek Moss, in exchange for his cooperation, got 5 years in probation. It wasn't perfect justice. Nothing ever was. But it was justice nonetheless. After the verdict was read, Cole and Sienna stood outside the courthouse again, watching the sun set over the city. They'd been seeing each other regularly for months now, and Max had taken to calling her Sienna instead of the lady Dad saved, which felt like progress. We did it, Sienna said, echoing the same words she'd texted him months earlier. Yeah, we did. What now? Cole thought about that question. What now? It was the same question he'd been asking himself since Sarah died, since he'd become a single father, since he'd carried Sienna down a burning mountain. What now? And for the first time, he had an answer that didn't feel like he was just treading water. Now we live, Cole said. We move forward. We figure it out as we go. Sienna smiled and took his hand, and they walked toward the parking lot together. It wasn't a perfect ending, because perfect endings didn't exist, but it was an honest one, a real one. And that was all Cole had ever wanted. Life had taught him that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was doing the right thing, even when you were terrified. It was standing up when it would be easier to sit down. It was carrying someone through fire when every instinct told you to save yourself. And it was letting people in, even when you'd been hurt before, because isolation wasn't safety. It was just loneliness, wearing a different mask. Cole had spent years trying to protect himself and Max from pain, from loss, from the messiness of caring about people beyond their small circle. But pain found you anyway. Loss was inevitable. And the messiness, he was learning, was where the good stuff lived. The connections, the growth, the moments that made you realize you were more than just a collection of fears and scars. He thought about the forest on Ridgefall, about the new growth pushing through the ash. That's what healing looked like. Not erasing what happened, but growing around it. Incorporating it into your story without letting it define you. The fire had burned, people had been hurt, but life was coming back. Stubborn and determined and refusing to quit. That night, Cole picked up Max from Mrs. Patterson's house and took him out for ice cream. They sat in the parking lot of the shop, eating cones that dripped faster than they could lick them, and Max told him about a project at school where they were learning about ecosystems. "Did you know some trees need fire to grow?" Max said. "Like their seeds won't even open unless there's heat." "I did know that, actually." "That's cool, right? Like bad things can make good things happen, so..." Cole looked at his son, at the ice cream smudged on his chin and the wisdom in his eyes that seemed too old for 6, and felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, buddy, that's exactly right." They finished their ice cream and drove home, and Cole tucked Max into bed with the kind of gratitude that came from knowing how easily things could have gone differently, how close they'd come to losing everything. But they hadn't. They'd survived, and more than that, they'd grown. As Cole stood in Max's doorway watching his son sleep, he thought about all the small choices that had led them here. The decision to answer the emergency call, the decision to carry Sienna down the mountain instead of leaving her, the decision to stand up at the hearing, the decision to fight back when powerful people tried to intimidate him. None of them had felt heroic in the moment. They'd felt terrifying and stupid and reckless. But strung together, they'd made a difference. They'd changed something. And maybe that was the real lesson. That heroism wasn't one grand gesture. It was 1,000 small choices, made in moments of doubt and fear, that added up to something meaningful. It was showing up even when you didn't have all the answers. It was trusting that doing the right thing mattered, even when the outcome was uncertain. Cole's phone buzzed with a text from Sienna. "Max asleep?" "Just now," Cole typed back. "Good. I was thinking about our conversation earlier about what comes next, and I think I'm going to take that teaching position, start in the fall." "That's great. What about you? Any big decisions on your end?" Cole thought about it. The truth was, he didn't have any big decisions to make. His life wasn't going to change dramatically. He'd keep doing rescue work, keep raising Max, keep showing up for the people who mattered. But there was one small decision he'd been considering, one door he'd been too afraid to walk through. "I was thinking maybe you could come to dinner at our place this weekend," Cole typed. "Real dinner, not takeout." "I'll cook." "You cook?" "I'm learning." "Then I'd love to." Cole smiled and set the phone down. It wasn't a marriage proposal or a declaration of love, it was just dinner. But it was also a choice. A small choice to let someone in, to build something new, to believe that his life could be more than just survival. He walked downstairs and stood in the kitchen, looking at the photos on the refrigerator. Pictures of Max at different ages, a few of Sarah from years ago, and now one from the lake trip, Sienna and Max laughing on the dock. His family was changing shape, expanding to include new people, and that was okay. More than okay. It was good. Cole thought about the fire one last time, about the heat and the smoke, and the moment when he'd made the choice to carry Sienna to safety. He'd been terrified, but he'd done it anyway. And everything that came after, the investigation, the hearing, the threats, the victory, had all stemmed from that one choice. That one moment when he decided that someone else's life mattered more than his fear. That's what courage was. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. And Cole had learned, through pain and struggle and too many sleepless nights, that he had more courage than he'd ever given himself credit for. He turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Not just contentment, but actual peace. The kind that came from knowing you'd done everything you could, that you'd fought this good fight, that you'd stood up when it mattered. The fire was out. The bad guys were in prison. The forest was healing. And Cole Grayson, single father and volunteer rescue worker, was finally ready to start healing too.